Imagine a superhero more powerful than almost any other in the Marvel universe. He's faster than the speed of light, stronger than the Hulk, and more beloved than even Captain America, yet no one remembers him. Today, we're unraveling the mystery of Robert Reynolds, the man who became Sentry, the golden guardian of good, and why his legacy was erased from the minds of every hero, villain, and citizen of the world. Marvel introduced the Sentry in a groundbreaking 2000 comic, a psychological and emotional journey that redefined what it means to be a hero. Let's dive into the origin of Sentry, the story of a man battling not only the forces of evil, but the darkness within himself. The most important thing is that this superhero is about to debut in the upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe and will most likely be significant if they don't mess it up. I'm talking about Sentry, a name everyone has heard, but very few know much about. Similar to his comic book origin, his story begins with Robert Reynolds, or Bob, who wakes up suddenly one night. His wife tells him to go back to sleep, but he says he can't and decides to take his dog out for a walk. However, Bob is feeling something strange, especially a dark entity's presence. Now, Bob was a very ordinary person who enjoyed living his normal life, and everything was going well. He takes a book out from his shelf called Untouched, and when he opens it, he finds a bottle inside, realizing he has a fondness for drinking. But something different was happening in Bob's mind. He started to feel that he was a superhero. It seemed that he was Sentry, a superhero who had existed for many years. By many years, I mean he was Marvel Comics' first superhero. He gains his powers from taking a much more dangerous version of Captain America's Super Soldier Serum. The Super Soldier Serum that Steve Rogers had was created by Dr. Erskine. It was perfect. But Bob drank a serum that was 1,000 times more potent than that perfect serum, and that's how he got his powers. With the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, Sentry became immensely powerful. He became Marvel Comics' first superhero, teaming up with many different superheroes like the Fantastic Four, Avengers, Hulk, Spider-Man, and many others, defeating numerous villains and saving the Earth multiple times. Yet, no one knows about him. While contemplating these things, his mind starts thinking about a dark entity or dark presence known as the Void. Before he can think any further, he suddenly hears a voice from behind and looks back to see that the Void has entered his dog. He strikes the dog with his hand, but the Void leaves, injuring the dog. Hearing the noise, his wife arrives and says, "Robert, you've started drinking again." They argue, and after that, his wife Lindy leaves, saying she can't take it anymore after being with him for so long. But Bob's mind is preoccupied. He opens his wardrobe and pulls out a jacket that looks very ordinary, except for a scarf hanging from the back, attached with a clothespin. After wearing it, he exclaims, "I found my Sentry suit." Any normal person would look at this and think it looks empty and ridiculous. But then we all get a shock when Bob steps out of his house and starts to fly. This means Bob has some kind of power. Now, what these powers are, where they came from, and why no one knows about him, all these things lead him to Reed Richards. Reed usually doesn't entertain people under ordinary circumstances, but since Bob sits on top of his building, Reed is also a bit confused about how he penetrated the sports field, as no normal person or superhero can enter. Bob approaches Reed and asks, "Do you remember me? Do you know about Sentry?" Reed replies, "I don't know who you're talking about." Bob responds, "At one time, we used to be best friends." Reed then tells him, "It's late at night, buddy." But Bob understands that, like the rest of the world, Reed Richards also knows nothing about him. He reminds Reed, "Remember you attended a wedding where there was a unicorn?" Upon hearing this, Reed's mind doesn't light up at all, and Bob leaves. Reed goes downstairs to where his Fantastic Four are sitting and asks Susan if they attended a wedding where there was a unicorn. Susan remembers nothing, but as soon as he mentions the unicorn, a golden unicorn appears, meaning it has always existed. But Reed and the others present have no memories of it because Sentry isn't there, so nothing related to him shows up. However, as soon as he triggers the word unicorn, that unicorn appears with a videotape underneath. Reed picks it up and plays it, and they are all shocked to know that it's a message from Reed to himself, where Reed tells his teammates that if they are watching this footage, it means Robert Reynolds, the guy talking about Sentry, has visited them, and they must not remember who Sentry is. Especially Reed should not try to get to the bottom of this, because if Sentry has returned, it means the Void is also about to return. But before Reed can tell them anything more, the footage stops there, leaving Reed with many questions in his mind. On the other hand, we see Bob visiting Hulk, and as soon as he meets Hulk, he first says, "Hey, Bruce." If you know about Hulk, he doesn't like to be called Bruce. We expect Hulk not to recognize him, and both will start fighting. Hulk even leaps at him, but thankfully, Hulk remembers who Bob is. He tells Bob that he remembers him because of Hulk's personality. If we talk about Bruce, he most likely doesn't have any memory of Bob, which is why he doesn't remember him. Since Hulk and Bruce are different personalities, Hulk still knows that Bob is Sentry and that they were once good friends. In this whole sequence, we also see that the scarf that was hanging behind him is slowly transforming into his suit. But Bob tells Hulk that the Void is coming back, which frightens Hulk. Do you understand how serious this situation is? That Hulk is scared upon hearing a villain's name? But Bob reassures him that he doesn't need to worry and gives him a sun, creating it with his hands and keeping it for Hulk to use when needed, and then he leaves. On the other side, we constantly see Reed struggling, trying to find out who Robert Reynolds, Bob, and Sentry are, and he begins to find some clues in his basement. But then Doctor Strange arrives, telling him that there's no need to do what he's trying to do. Doctor Strange remembers exactly who Sentry is, but he shows Reed a video clip using magic, where Reed Richards is creating a machine with his Fantastic Four. He gives Doctor Strange a message from his future self, saying that if he ever tries to remember Sentry, Doctor Strange should stop him. Doctor Strange simply tells Reed that there's no need to do what he's trying to do, and he tears up any documents he has found and leaves. Meanwhile, we see Sentry meeting Spider-Man, who had previously taken pictures of Sentry but now remembers nothing about him. Sentry calls Spider-Man Peter and shows him a photo he took, but because Peter doesn't remember Sentry, he sees nothing in the photo and calls it a blank piece of paper before leaving. Bob tells him to try and figure out why some magazines that have been published are missing issues. At that moment, Peter doesn't pay attention, but when he goes to the Daily Bugle to research, he finds out that some magazines are missing 1 or 2 issues. This realization clicks for him that Sentry exists, and his memories related to Sentry start to return.